and my friend and mentor, Richard Blaustein. I know some of you here knew Richard. I was taking some music lessons with him and just hanging out with him and just trying to soak in all that he knew about this music. And he shared with me this collection of local music called Down Around Bowmantown that he had put together in the late 80s. And what it was contemporary recordings of his musical community, which included Will Keyes and Tom Slagle, a handful of other guys. He had been hanging out with them. He lived down in Bowmantown and had been playing with these guys in the 70s and on into the 80s. At some point after a handful of years of knowing them, it was revealed to him that this same group of people had made acetate recordings in the late 1930s. This blew Richard's mind and gave him an idea for a project. So this Down Around Bowmantown is an ethnographic study of this group of local musicians here in East Tennessee and what they sounded like with 45 years between recordings, playing some of the same tunes. And Will Keyes was one of the musicians. It's such a cool project. As it happens, Richard passed away in 2020, and I, in about 2017, started a project to turn that into an ebook, which happened. And the morning Richard died, I was with him, and he got to see his work kind of come forward into the digital age. He was laying there on his deathbed that morning, and he looked through it through his iPad. That's a satisfying thing to me. So, Will Keyes. Richard said I had to go look up Will Keyes. He was easy to find. He was in retirement. I went to see him twice, and I'd heard about this thing he did with his exquisite two-finger playing, where he would get turned upside down. Maybe some of you who are familiar with Will's playing know this. He would pick the fifth string with his index finger while getting the first string with his thumb. He would get himself going upside down. And to watch it, it just looks as natural as anything. To try to do it, that's another matter. But I sat there with him a couple of times. He had that banjo. He smoked these filterless cigarettes. What were they, Jerry? Merits. And both times he would just sort of disappear. Just be sort of a silhouette.
Look in the case.
Yeah, there you go.
In the compartment. There's his lighter.
There's his lighter. So he would just sort of disappear, but he tried to show me what he was doing, and he told me a couple of times he learned how to do that in his sleep. That's what he would say. We know what it's like to kind of late at night. You got the pot of your banjo sitting on the couch, maybe. You're comfortable. Your arms are by your side. You can kind of get in this in-between space. That's the space Will said he was in when he was just trying to find a way to get these melodies after working the graveyard shift, get a beer on the way home, sit on the recliner, try to work out these melodies with two fingers. That's how he says he came up with it in his sleep. But we're really fortunate today to have two of his nephews. Now, I've read, I think I got different information from you. You said that your mom was one of 16.
Well, it sort of depends on how you count them.
If you count the halves.
That's
Okay.
right.
Counting the halves.
Count the halves.
Well, big old family.
I think there were a few early on who didn't do it.
Right.
Richard,
Close enough.
right? So Jerry's father and Will were brothers. Jerry's mother, Richard's mother, was also a sibling. But they had very different experiences growing up with the banjo. Richard was raised in Rochester, but was coming down here in Rochester, New York. Was coming down here his whole life, kind of gleaning the East Tennessee music and spending time with Will and Jerry's dad, Jay.
I distinctly remember the first banjo I ever saw, which of course was down here. It was either Jay's or Will's. I don't remember which, but we were at one of the houses, and it was sitting across the room with the case open. I was about 3 years old, and I took off for that, and my mother said, "Don't touch that banjo." So I knew it was something I wanted to learn.
Well, and this is the first time these guys have seen each other in a while. They live in the same area, but aren't in all that much touch, right?
Yeah.
everything's
unfortunately.
cool, but like
Oh,
you
yeah.
just guys don't cross paths too much. So I think this is a cool experience to get these guys interacting about Will, about East Tennessee banjo music, and just what it's like spending a whole life playing the banjo. Jerry's spent his life playing bluegrass banjo. He was in Paul Williams' Victory Trio for a long time. And then Richard also plays bluegrass banjo, but has carried on a Will Keys-ish two-finger style, which is pretty much all you play now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't play any three. I haven't played three finger in a long time, and I've got Parkinson's disease, which somehow has blocked one of the fingers out. And I got good taste. No, I didn't mean that.
So let's make them welcome. Dr. Richard Hood, Jerry Keys.
Jerry is, to my mind, one of the one or two greatest bluegrass banjo players around. He really is. I played bluegrass for decades, and I was one of the top 10 or 15,000 banjo players around. Just keeping track of that. You want to play? You want to try Silver Bell or Sycamore?
Let's do Sycamore Shoals. You know, does everybody know where Sycamore Shoals is at? Up toward Elizabethton.
Yeah.
You know where Elizabethton's at?
Yeah. Yeah. Sycamore Shoals is off there. If you're going up toward Elizabethton and look over into the floodplain, kind of.
It's to the left, and
Yeah.
it was a Revolutionary War battleground.
Tonga River.
It was a meeting ground for the guys who went and fought at Kings Mountain.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes, and
The
song,
Over the Mountain Boys.
I learned the song from Will.
I did
He
too.
played it two finger, and I worked up a bluegrass version of it, and I got his approval, so I felt like that was okay.
Yeah, I learned it from Will too. So
Good deal.
we'll see.
Let me
Let's
just say
see.
one more thing
Play
before
the
we get
same
started.
song.
let's just keep this open. If you guys want to interact or have questions, let's just make it an open thing.
Yeah,
We don't have
yeah.
to save questions for the end, right?
Anybody want to yell, tune that thing? That's all right.
Ready?
Yeah. All right. Oh, you're done? Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, by the time Will was older, he played about everything in double C tuning.
What's that now?
I was saying, well, by the time Will got older, he played just about everything out of double C tuning, didn't he?
Yeah, Will started out playing two finger. My daddy got him started,
Yeah.
J Keys.
Yep.
And back in the day, my dad played banjo and played guitar and played fiddle some. I had an aunt that played, we had an aunt that played piano. And I'm talking way back before they were married. And he told Will, he said, "You're gonna play the banjo." So that's the way Will got stuck with the banjo. But anyway,
Well, I remember the folks in the family, I'd be raving about Will, and they'd say, "You should have heard."
Dad,
Yeah.
yeah.
Jay.
But Will played three finger.
You know,
And a lick. Let me show them. Demonstrate here. They had a lick, a two-finger lick, kind of like what Richard's doing there. That's the basis of Will's picking. I mean, the very, very beginning. Of course, he took it on to way different heights than that. But what Will was doing was this. Later, he used two finger picks and a thumb. He's doing the same lick. He's going. That's the same thing I was doing. Anyway, he said, shoot. He said, I learned I was just doing the same thing with three. I was wasting a finger. So he just went back with two fingers, and that really caught on in the area.
Well, an awful lot of old-time players, when Bill Monroe went on the Opry with Earl, started picking up three-finger style, and really stopped playing old-time music for a while, and Will was kind of like that. Whenever I heard him play, when I was a kid, he was playing three-finger, this up into the mid-60s maybe, and I remember one time, he and your dad were out somewhere and playing, and I was listening to him, and Will, just in the middle of everything, said, this is the way we used to play back home, and he played a little bit of two-finger, and I thought, holy smoke, listen to that,
He said he got a lot more tension playing two-finger than he did three-finger,
sure.
but he was playing the same thing.
Yeah.
But then he took it on. I mean, Will could play silver bells, any of the old tunes, fiddle tunes, he could play them. And he could turn right around and play a waltz. He could play a Beatles tune if he wanted to.
That's
if
right.
he could hear it in his head, he could play it. He sure could.
Well, he played that Bob Taylor's tune. That's a waltz. Yeah. We have ancestors, I guess you would call them, who back in the 1880s, believe it or not, these were brothers. Bob and Alf Taylor ran against each other for governor of Tennessee. They were our grandmother's uncles.
Huh.
Yeah, and
Fiddlers, right?
they were fiddlers.
Yeah.
And I think they played banjo too. At least it was kind of family.
Yeah,
people
and
said
then,
they
and then
did.
on beyond that, we had a famous uncle, cousin, what are you going to call it, Nathaniel Taylor,
Yes,
who was a War of 1812 general, brigadier general.
way back when. Yeah.
And all of his information's up around Elizabeth and that Sabine Hill. That was his home.
There are
and
some
then-
Keyses that will tell you we have Zachary Taylor in the family too.
It's in the tree.
Yeah.
I've got the tree laid out.
They left all
way on down.
they left all the horse thieves out there.
Oh yeah.
So were there fiddle players in your family?
Sorry?
Were there fiddle players in your family?
Just the Taylor brothers.
I mean, when your parents,
My dad played fiddle.
he played fiddle?
Somewhat. His guitar later on was his main instrument.
So
He loved Merle Travis and stuff like that.
is there a tune y'all do together that's real local, like that from around here, like
Well, the Sycamore Show.
yeah, that was great. Anything
Yeah,
else like
that's
that?
a local show, a local tune.
Bob Taylor's tune, I guess.
I don't
know.
So where did Will get his repertoire?
Yeah.
Growing up.
Where he just whatever he heard.
Yeah.
From radio or from local players? Or?
Playing with people around.
Around.
Playing around the area, same place everybody else.
I've seen him and my dad get together. They used to call it making music, and they would get together at our house or my uncle's house, usually on a Friday night, and we'd get a carton of Pepsi Colas and get hot dogs. That was a treat for us on Friday night, and then they called it making music. Let's make a little music. And I've seen them as being Keyses argue over which way a tune went.
And they were
No,
both,
it didn't
and they
go
were
to
both
either.
right, weren't
Yeah,
they?
it did. Back
Yeah.
and forth.
The Keyses have a way of knowing everything.
Now watch out, your mother's half Key, or your mother's Key.
I know, and she knew everything too.
Well, that's why you know half.
I get it.
See where it splits.
Yeah. We had,
But
I
we-
mean,
we,
we
you know,
had aunts who
we
were
have
very
fun.
musical. Our Aunt Ruth.
We had an Aunt Ruth that wrote
She wrote a lot
A
of hymns.
lot of music and
Yeah.
played the piano. She offered free piano lessons. Of course, you wasn't around, but to all the nieces and nephews. And I learned 3 tunes on the piano by memory. She thought I was learning by notes, which I wish I had, but I didn't. And then I thought it was Sissy. I was about 10 years old. I thought, this is Sissy. I'm not doing this. I'm going to get outside and get dirty.
I learned one of her hymns and made a recording of it
Oh, yeah?
that they played at her funeral, called Clear Shining. You remember that tune?
I remember
Great
barely,
tune.
but I know what
And
you're talking
there's a choir in Japan, of all places, that's recorded that. You can find it on YouTube.
Huh.
Yeah.
But
My mom
anyway.
could do some of that piano stuff. Oh, well, let's play something.
Yeah.
Let me
Wanna
just
do
say something
Silver Bell?
about the Taylors. It's called the War of the Roses.
Yeah.
Right. They both became governor of Tennessee, about 25 years apart,
Yep.
and ran against each other one year, campaigned together.
Yeah.
One was a Democrat, the other was a Republican. Supposedly slept in the same bed.
Yeah. And, you
I'm
know,
sure.
they
Yeah.
got together apparently and decided if we're going to campaign against each other, let's just schedule everything at the same time. And we'll get the fiddles out and we'll play some music. These guys were already kind of, you might want to say stand-up comics, but they were kind of spokesmen, kind of like the Mark Twain type stuff that you hear about. And they did that all their lives. But, you know, when they imagine, how did they get nominated by the state Republican and Democratic Party? I think they were from up in Carter County, weren't they? Yeah. Are you kidding? And ran against each other for governor. And all of the campaign stuff was fiddle tunes and jokes about each other. and they say that Bob won because he told better jokes. Don't ask me. Alf Taylor went on to be a local kind of spokesman. He had a gospel quartet. He recorded some stuff. You can find it on YouTube. Named after his dog. He had a treeing walker hound named Old Nimble. But yeah, those guys were really something else. I've got some of their books. I've got some books about them. They're something else.
Don't
Yeah,
we
they-
have their carriage that they toured around in?
Oh,
We
right.
have their fiddle.
We have their
one of
carriage
the
in the
fiddles.
museum.
We have the old Lumber Quartet. Alf Taylor recorded
Yeah.
in 1923.
Yeah.
How many people recorded in 23?
Yeah,
That's
it's-
real
it's-
early.
Who did he record for?
It's a vocal quartet.
Okay.
And it was
it's a gospel tour.
I think it was Victor.
Okay.
But we have Alf Taylor's fiddle in the
I think-
museum
I think
today. We should have thought
I may
Brought
have.
that along.
to bring it. It was turning into dust. And
Bobby Taylor says he's also a descendant.
Bobby Taylor, he says what?
The fiddler Bobby Taylor
Yeah.
is also a descendant.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, so he says.
Well, so there's another story that Bill Hensley, some of you might know the fiddler Bill Hensley from Western North Carolina. He says he got his first. He lived in an adjacent farm to the Taylors. Bill Hensley said he got his first fiddle at 7 years old, just before he was moving over to Asheville from Bob Taylor. He was a really encouraging presence for young musicians.
We're going to just get you a little other side of Will that's pretty much unknown, except around the family. But Jerry and I have heard this song about 15 or 20 times each, at least.
Well, that was always a request when they would get together and play music. Somebody, some of the kids, or
Will
somebody
always sing it for the
like to hear
kids,
Will
yeah.
sing.
Yeah.
I'm going back to where I come from.
All right. I never heard any other version of this song. I didn't think it existed. I figured maybe Jay and Will had written it, But it turns out
No.
it was like a pop song from the 30s or 40s, kind of a glitzy pop tune. I don't know who did
That's a
it.
guitar.
What?
I said, that's a guitar.
What?
No, it's not.
Well, you got to make a little money once in a while. But this is the only tune I ever heard Will sing. Did you ever hear him sing anything else?
He probably did, but
He
this
must
was
have.
his big hit.
You betcha. tune?
Thank
Close
you.
enough.
Close enough.
I used to go. Oh, wait a minute, I gotta put another pick on. What's the matter with me?
What's your tuner?
Nope, I'm close enough. I know I'm not into it, but I'm close enough. I gotta
Sounds great.
put another pick on. That's not one. Sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. I recorded this with Will back there in the
And the
90s.
log cabin?
Yeah, in the cabin, you bet. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I got it. Thanks. I used to go down to the station every evening just to watch the Pullman train come rolling in. And then one night, that great sensation got the best of me and led me to a life of sin. I took my hat and $14 and I started down the pathway of the kind that usually follows when you're rich and hunting romance. But my hunting days are over, I can tell you that. Let's turn around. I met a man in Kansas City, and he asked me if I'd like to see the hottest spot in town. And I said, yeah, that's what I come for. So he guaranteed to show me all around. He had some things he had to fix up, so I gave him $14, but there must have been a mix-up. He's been gone since Sunday morning, and I got a hunch I'll never see that man no more. I'm going back to where I come from, where the mockingbird is singing in the lilac tree. You wanna play it? When I grow up and have a grandson, I can tell him all my troubles and then watch his eyes bug out. But chances are he won't believe me and will do the same darn thing when he grows up, no doubt. But he can't say I didn't warn him, not at least until he runs into that city slicker. Gosh darn him, going back to where I come from, where the mockingbird is singing in the lilac tree, where the mockingbird is singing in the lilac tree. Yeah. I like that echo of that applause off the back. Doesn't that make you feel like you're on the Opry or something? You want to just do one and I'll back you on the guitar? Do some of your bluegrass stuff. This guy can play bluegrass banjo. I'll tell you what. I went to a festival. I was playing around up in New York, of course, and when I was a kid, I wanted a banjo. Really wanted a banjo. My folks, who had moved up from here, were trying to, what would you say, live down their upbringing. People up there called my mother Tennessee Evie with a smirk on their face, and they made fun of us. And my mom got into playing Broadway musical records all the time. She wouldn't let us. Oh my God, I can sing you any song you want, from Gigi or Flower Drum. Yeah, it's true. But I wanted a banjo, and they wouldn't give me one. I finally had to dig a 40-foot leech line and fill it with rock and get $30 and buy a Sears banjo, honestly. But nobody in that area knew that I was learning banjo. I wouldn't let them know. They would have made fun of me. Amazing. Come down here, you know, this guy. Anyway, I went to the Gettysburg Bluegrass Festival about, what we decided, 1978 or 9, yeah. And Jerry, who are you playing with?
I was playing with Albert Eldy at that time,
Yeah.
and the Blue Ridge Partners.
Yes. And I got there and I went into the stage and this band was playing and I heard this banjo player. Wow, listen to that guy. And I was, you know, applauding after the breaks and stuff like they don't do anymore. And all my friends were coming around saying, listen to that guy play a banjo. They got through and I walked up and said, that's some great banjo playing. And Jerry said, thanks, Richard. Or something. I didn't know it was him. He said, aren't you my cousin Richard? I said, holy smoke. So there you go. What do you want to play?
That was 40-some years ago, so.
Yeah, you betcha. Well, I understand, yeah. That's why I said, why don't you play one? We can do some more.
Old oaken bucket.
Huh?
You know the old oaken bucket?
Old oaken bucket.
I don't know that one. It's still a little short in breed.
Yeah. Ah, right. You're in G position, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah. That's nice.
Oh, rough. Claw hammer? No, he just never did. He, everybody just raved about his. I mean, I've seen people like Mike Seeger stand and watch him.
Yeah.
And say, man, I just.
Well, you know,
What are you doing?
And two finger was the regional old time style in this area.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason everybody thinks old time banjo is claw hammer is that it came out around Galax, and that's where all the folklorists went, really. So that's the reason why. So I recorded a couple of things in claw hammer. I'm ashamed to say, but I couldn't do it today.
Now, some of you may have heard. On my mother's side, there was another two-finger banjo figure by the name of Bob Crawford.
Yeah, that's
You ever
right.
heard of Bob
yeah,
Crawford?
sure.
That was my mother's
I'll
half
be
brother.
done. I'll be done.
And he may have been mentioned on the down around Bowman Town.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
And
Yeah, and my dad's side of the family had the Hamilton boys out of Boone's Creek. Carl and Ted and Haynes Hamilton, who supposedly ran a TV repair shop, but mostly they fished and played. What do you like?
you play Home Sweet Home out of
Hey, the
D.
power's back on.
Oh,
I used to. Yeah, we got it. Yeah, get it. Yep.
Home Sweet Home.
up with in terms of like a system of playing in a specific tuning, and what Earl did, like choosing a tuning, coming up with licks, little conventions, little kind of standard things. Do you hear that in Will's playing?
Yeah, I hear.
Do you see the
Will
parallels?
doing
Like
stuff, you know, kind of like he'll use the same thing like on in between a melody, you know.
Yeah.
You know, like a Scruggs thing.
Right.
You know,
Will
Will
had
had a
those-
thing for that.
Well, and you know, Earl Scruggs, when he's doing that up to that, this,
Oh yeah.
that's two-finger style banjo, you know? Yeah. That's two-finger banjo.
Exactly.
So,
And
now,
the
Earl-
thing.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Earl came out of Western North Carolina, where the old-time style there is a kind of three-finger style. Snuffy Jenkins and people like that. And so he was upgrading or updating or whatever you want to call it, a three-finger style. And then he got on the opera course and boom,
Oh, yeah.
it became what you play.
Yeah, Uncle Dave Macon said he might be able to pick the banjo,
But he ain't a bit
dang
funny.
bit funny.
That's right.
But people ask me before sometimes, they'll say, why don't you smile when you play? And I'll say, they pay me to play, not to smile. But no, when you're picking a banjo, Richard, I think, will tell you it takes some pretty deep concentration at
Oh
times.
yeah, yeah.
Because you can get out on a limb and
And you always
can't get back in.
Yeah, you got
You're just hanging there.
You got to try to remember where the exit ramp is at all times.
Exactly. You know.
Well, I wanted to just say one thing. I know that Richard has played a lot of music. He also is a professor of English literature. That was part of his career. But now he's also been writing, and I've loved his fiction because, much more so than local color writers like Sharon McCrum and other people like that include traditional music in their writing. Like, I love how Richard writes about music.
Speak up a little bit.
Of the stories, like, he has this great comparison between catching muskrats and improvising and playing music with other people. It's really, really cool. That was from the first book, right?
Yes.
And so it's really cool. I really appreciate the way he brings his musician's understanding to that writing and to this area. All of your writing is based on
Everything. Yeah, I have 3 novels out. They're all based in this area. The first one is based on an old family story, a true story, on my father's side of the family. Some of you may know that outside of Fall Branch, there's a big old mansion house that a guy built way back in the 1920s, and he owned the land on Long Island there in Kingsport, and sold it and took this money way out in the country and built the biggest house anybody had ever seen around here. This is all true. He had a wife and 2 grown children. They refused to live in this house for reasons nobody really understands. And one night, several years later, his son rode out there and killed him, shot the father. And that's the beginning of this novel, and it becomes a story about that true story, based on that true story.
Huh.
And it has a sort of secondary character based, you all know about Kenny Wagner. Some of you know about Kenny Wagner. He was a local outlaw that Bradley Kincaid did a song about. And he's in there, and anyway, I should have brought some
What's that
novels.
book called? That first novel?
That's called Regret the Dark Hour.
It's on Amazon.
Thank you, Jan.
You're welcome.
It's called Regret the Dark Hour. That title, of course, is a line from Wildwood Flower.
Yes.
How I long to see him and regret the dark hour. You know, he's gone. So that's regret. Then the second novel is called Carolina Blood. It's about a guy who grew up the son of a wealthy physician in Kingsport and discovered on his father's death that he was adopted. And there's a little kind of back office document, which they used to do stuff like that back then, that names him as the father of this son. And he finds the mother's name on there and a place called Cheline Creek. That's all it says. But he wants to find this mother. So he winds up back in Carolina, tracing back through his family roots and trying to find his mother. And part of the theme of that one is this stuff all just happens again and again and again. But it's a mountain story. And the third one is about a woman growing up on White Oak Flats. which some of you may know is up near Shelton Laurel, up on the Parkway. I mean, up on the App Trail. And she grows up there, and she breaks all the stereotypes of the typical young hillbilly girl. You know, she's well-read, she's interesting, she keeps a journal. She has a teacher who gets her started writing. Most of that novel is journal entries from her childhood through into her 90s.
I got a question.
Yes.
You read any of these books?
I didn't even know he was an author.
We'll have to fix that.
I'll see you all. But no, I appreciate it. Take a look at them. They are on Amazon. The first one was a finalist in the Book of the Year, whatever you call that, from the Independent Authors Network. That was kind of a big deal. And otherwise, I've sold about 3. So.
Well, I'm gonna pick one on Will's band.
Oh yeah.
I'll tell you a little history about this banjo. I was about 13 or 14 years old, like I said, when I first started trying to play a little bit. And my dad bought me a K banjo for Christmas. And trying to play a K is pretty tough sometimes. And I had worked hard for my dad. My dad built houses, and I had worked really hard all week. And come payday, and the lady come out. My dad was building an addition on her house, and she said, "Well, Mr. Keys, how much do I owe your son?" And my dad, of course, said, "Well, he's not done too much." And, give him $20. So I worked all week for $20, 50 cents an hour. And at that time, Will had a RB100 banjo. And his wife had broke the neck out of it, knocked it over with the vacuum cleaner. But he had glued it back with some Eastman glue, what they used to call that was glue at the time. But he never did really, really like that banjo later on because his style was changing a little bit. And at that time, he had his eye on the one in Johnson City over here at the pawn shop, at Albert's Pawn Shop, I believe it was. And what was that one you asked me about?
The bacon.
It was a bacon and day, yeah. So anyway, I was down at his house, and I'd get off the school bus there a lot of times. My dad was building a house right above where my Uncle Will lived, and I'd get off the school bus and I'd sit around and play his banjo till Dad got off from work, and then I'd ride home with him. But anyway, I asked Will what he'd take for that Gibson RB100. He had a son that played some music. He asked him if he was interested in it. He said no. He said you can have it for $20. So I've still got the banjo, and that's the same banjo that they used on the Richard Jonesbury Jail session thing. But anyway, Will went to California to visit his daughter. She had married a guy in the Navy. And they were I'm not sure in California, but he went to a pawn shop out there and he found this Paramount. And he fell in love with it. Bought it and brought it, and that was his banjo from then on.
And that's a plectrum banjo.
It's a plectrum, and he put the fifth key in it.
Put a fifth string in it, yeah. And no one else on earth, as far as I thought, could ever play that thing, but we're going to learn otherwise, right?
Huh?
I said, I thought nobody else on earth could play that banjo.
You got to shut your eyes. You can't
We're
look.
going to
That's
learn
it.
otherwise. We're going to learn otherwise.
Because the plectrum banjo, the inlays are in different positions. Like, see, there's C, and you would normally have an inlay right here, but the inlay's in B. Anyway, let's see. We don't have a cable. Let me play something on it real quick.
Yeah.
I'll tell you another little deal about this banjo. You see the bridge on it? Will made his own bridges.
Yeah.
They are made out of a putty knife handle. Yeah, I got one of them. You take a rosewood putty knife handle and work a bridge out of it.
That's amazing.
That's silver boots right there.
Yeah.
We'll play that in a minute. Let's play a little. bridge was sharp right there, and it's about to cut my finger. My little finger was bumping it a little bit.
It's about time to wrap up. Any questions? I think that we have to stop. But
I was watching Will play probably at Galax at the bus, years ago, and somebody came up and said their analysis of what he was doing was trying to play like Don Reno with two fingers. I thought the guy was a jerk. But
No.
I can see that you're probably. Yeah, I mean, it didn't
Don
seem
Reno
right.
done a lot of two-finger picking, but his stuff was like
He had some interesting chords.
stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. But the chord structures, Will played a lot of pop songs, and
He could play anything.
yeah, he really could. Yeah,
He
And
wasn't
so
limited.
maybe in that sense, Don Reno was no Will Keys.
No, that's a whole different apparatus.
He had a better bus too.
That's right.
last question. Anybody? Think you'd like to know? I have one
Got a
last
question?
technical question. Would Will try to find his melodies inside of chord shapes?
Yes.
Is
At
that
times.
how
At
he
times, yeah.
At times.
But the thing that's amazing to me about Will, he just played.
Yeah,
He
that's
didn't
right.
have any rules and
You
regulations.
listened and played. That's
Nothing.
right.
He had no, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What was his tuning?
Anything was open. Well,
How did he tune the banjo?
he'd do this a lot. You know, he'd tune the high.
This one. 2 steps up. It's that tune.
That right there.
What if he wanted to play in G? Would he go back to G or
Yeah.
a C? He would. He'd tune it around.
His 3-finger stuff he played out of G.
Yeah.
2-finger stuff he tended to play out of
Is there any, do y'all have another one you can play together?
C. Sure.
Do what now?
Play one more together.
Let me lay this thing back over here.
Will and I recorded some stuff. If you go on YouTube and look up Will Keys, maybe some of his stuff with Jerry on there. Look up Will Keys and Richard Hood, and you'll get some of the stuff we did. I have tried and tried and tried to kind of get 2-finger banjo tunes out there, onto kind of a legacy of 2-finger tunes. I've got hundreds of them on YouTube. So if you want to look that stuff up, feel free.
And Richard made a record with Will,
Well,
and so did Jerry.
yes.
Jerry's
got his. Ours nobody ever put ours through a machine. A lot of that stuff is up on YouTube. I've got it all. I'll get it to Roy and he
Let me
can.
see that CD a minute. Will and I did this CD together in the year of 2000, the winter of 2004 and into 2005. And he told me, he said, "You've about waited too late to do this," because he was getting sick. He had a brain tumor. And of course, he died later that November. And his son hauled him to Galax that year in 2004, and he just couldn't even hardly walk or do anything up there. He couldn't pick. It was sad, to watch him go down. But anyway, we did this, and I've got a few of them for sale if anybody's interested in it. What it is, Will's playing about 4 tunes by himself. I'm playing about 4, and then we got about 4 that were back and forth, like the Sycamore shows. And Trey Hensley's playing guitar on it. G.C. Matlock's playing guitar on it. Hunter Barry's fiddling on it. So anyway, if anybody's interested in them, I got a few there.
We have just started. Yeah, I know. We've just started putting our heads together about doing some things together, maybe finding a date at the down home or something, and continuing this kind of
Something
stuff.
similar
I'd love
to
to
this.
do it. Yeah. We used to get together now and again and pick, but not very often.
It's
Maybe
been a long
3
time,
times,
Richard.
and it sure has. Yeah. Well, man, it is great. Yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
Let's do one more. What do you want?
What do you want to do?
Let's see.
Something I know.
You know his "Don't Get Drunk, Johnny"?
You're out of my category there.
That's a Will.
Let's do Silver Bells.
Yeah.
You gonna kick it?
No,
you go
you do-
ahead.
you
Take
do.
off on it.
Yeah, you betcha.
Well, the concert's at 7:15.
7:30. Okay. I think we have good news. I think.
Supper?
News about the fact that I see lights on
Oh, look at that.
in buildings,
There'll be lots.
which means that the cafeteria is open and has food. So that is where dinner is going to be. If you forgot your coupon or need a dinner coupon, come see me. And then the concert is actually going to start closer to 7:15 rather than 7:30. So try to get in there with, doors are at 7, so come over there whenever you would like. If we end up over at the Culp and somehow the cafeteria is not open, we'll figure out a plan to be.
Yeah, Jerry.
All right.
Before we leave, Jerry, tell them a little bit about that master.
This banjo?
Yeah. Tell 'em.
Okay, let me back up. Has anybody ever heard of Carl and J.P. Salzman and Salzman Brothers? Anyway, they played in Greenville at WGRV in the mid-40s, and they had a banjo picker by the name of Thomas Martin that was from around Galax. He had a brother named Joel Martin, which had a lot of banjo stuff. I know you probably heard him. And just to be honest about it, the guy was bad to drink. And he would pawn this banjo to a guy in Greenville till he gather up a little money. And I'm talking in the 40s. And there's another guy by the name of, I think his name Dead Anyway, he graduated high school. His daddy bought him a brand new RB 250 bow tie.
Yeah.
Okay, this was in 1956.
I was going to say early 50s, yeah.
56, and he goes by this Hensley guy's house, and he says, "How would you trade?" And the Hensley guy said, "I'll trade even with you because you got a new banjo." So they traded. Harvey Folks is the guy's name, and then in 1979, I bought it off of Harvey Folks. It's a 1938 RB75, and the number in it is 752-2, and I don't know if anybody knows J.D. Crowe. The number in his is 752-4.
I'll be there.
Yeah. So,
And this
is, I've got the original neck at home. This is a Frank Neek neck because several years ago, Sonny Osborne said, "You better get the original neck out of that thing and put it up." No, it's a 5-string.
What's the original 575?
It's RB75, yeah.
And yours?
This is a Wayman, I believe built around 1892.